The L in bless is for listen. We're going through the word bless, thinking about the bless rhythms. B, begin with prayer. L, listen. So listening might be the most important step. But for those of us in ministry, especially people who make their living talking, listening might be your secret superpower if you'd give it a chance. It's funny how that when we think about sharing our faith and talking to people about Jesus, we almost always talk about talking. But listening is actually what engages the other person so we can talk and they will listen. So God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. I think He meant for us to listen twice as much as we talk. Here's what happens when we are listening to other people. We're engaging their own discovery process because we're hearing them share their thoughts, and so their ideas are starting to unfold, and it gives us opportunities to find pathways to build more conversation and build more relationship with them. And the more that we listen, the more likely they are to trust us, which I think is super important. As trust goes up, then you have more and more ability to be able to speak truth into their lives. If we don't listen, if we don't love, there's no reason a person really wants to hear what we have to say. Proverbs says it's a shame and a folly not to listen. So let's listen. Now let's talk about, so how do we listen? What are some ways we listen? Well, one of the things is, by listening, you could also, as you think about your neighborhood specifically, be watching for things that happen in your neighborhood and see the activity that's unfolding, and then in your spirit be praying and asking God to alert you to things for which you should be aware. For example, maybe you see a moving van come into your neighborhood. So you know that within a day or two there's going to be a new family. You could go down and greet them, maybe take them a gift, and welcome them to the neighborhood and start a relationship. Or maybe there's someone moving out you need to say goodbye to and tell them you'll be praying and share contact information. So being aware of what's happening in your neighborhood is a way of listening. A few years ago, one of our neighbors was taking down their back deck because they were going to build a new deck. And as they were taking their deck down, it actually fell when they weren't ready for it, and it fell on the neighbor. And so he was trapped beneath his deck. Fortunately, there were a couple other of my neighbors who were out in their yards. 2 of them were working in their driveways when they heard it, and they were able to run there. One of them got a car jack, and they were able to jack the deck up and get him out from under. Now, someone else called 911, an ambulance came and all of that. Belinda, my wife, and I weren't the first responders, but we went quickly to this crowd of people that was growing and offered to help. We offered to take care of the kids or do a couple other things. And in the process, we're able to meet and talk with our neighbors in a way that we would not have if we weren't paying attention to what went on in our neighborhood. So I encourage you to listen. If you're in a conversation, and sometimes I'm in Ubers, I want to encourage you to let that conversation flow naturally, and you can prompt it by asking questions. But the person doesn't feel like you're being intrusive if you're asking questions about them, like, hey, what was the best part of your day today? Or what's something you really enjoy doing when you have some free time? Or you might ask them, hey, is there anything that's been difficult lately? I'm willing to pray for you. If you have a relationship, you can ask that question. Sometimes I'll say to a waiter or a waitress at a restaurant, I'm going to pray for my food in a minute here. I'd be glad to include you in the prayers and anything for which you'd like me to pray. Sometimes that very simple question starts a conversation that can be quite profound. One time I asked a waitress about her tattoo, because I've learned that people are always willing to talk about their tattoos. There's a reason they have that tattoo, and they're usually glad to talk about it. This particular waitress was at Texas Roadhouse, and it was a tattoo of like a little baby. And so I asked the question thinking that might be her child, and then she told me about a baby that had died. So that was a very sad moment. It also was a moment I could say to her that I had a child that died too, and that I was willing to pray with her. And we had a good conversation about that. So listening will open up, I think, truthful, heartfelt conversations much more than any kind of planned or rehearsed speech. So when we think about the blessed rhythms, it would just be entirely inappropriate to think of being a blessing to others if we weren't good at listening. Someone said something about listening that's really profound, and this is where I'll close. They said, listening is so close to loving that people often can't tell the difference. When people feel like that you love them, they'll almost always ask you why. And that gives you a great opportunity to talk about the love of Jesus, His grace, His forgiveness, and His work in our lives. And you can offer the same to them. So after you've prayed, be sure that you listen.